Um, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about myself and my role briefly, and then a few startups that I've gone through. Professor Tesh already talked about myself, so I don't want to repeat that. But basically, I was born and educated in Korea, got a bachelor's degree from Seoul National University, and then came to State for my master's and PhD. After graduation, I spent a lot of work in Silicon Valley. First, I worked for Intel about 12 years. After that, a few startups, and the general manager at GE. And currently, I'm working for the LS Corporation as a Silicon Valley operation over here. Um, Basically, I have both technology and business experiences, big corporation and small startups, hardware and software. So whatever you name it, I have all the good taste on that. All right. Oh, okay. So two more advertisement slides. I want to talk about my corporation that I'm working for right now. LS is the top 13th largest corporation in Korea in terms of asset. We are a technology manufacturing corporation providing a broad range of the equipment for power infra technologies. Our target markets are smart and green, especially in APAC and EMEA markets. And at a high level, we have 5 business units, start from cable and cable systems, and then we call industrial systems division, which is making smart grid, power, and automations. And we have 3 more additional business units, the materials and consumer life energy side and machinery and equipment. Combining all of them, last year our revenue was $34 billion, which is about 5 times bigger for growth for the last 10 years. My operation is called LSSVO. This is corporate strategy team or corporate venture. We are looking for new technologies to be a leader of next generation power infra technologies. We're looking for both in hardware and softwares. For example, smart grid, softwares, and advanced materials are some of the example areas that we are looking for. Our corporation LS is known to have a strong partnership management philosophy. It means both internal teamwork and external collaboration. With that, we try to work with potential partners here through the joint ventures M&As. That's the mission that I have here in LS Silicon Valley office. With that, let me talk on today's main topic, which is the Korea and its ecosystem for the Silicon Valley startups. To start with that, let's talk about Korea business environment first. From my last work at GE, I was able to get these statistics. Like Korea is about 1/4 of California in terms of land side, but 30% more population. So it's a very densely populated country. And in terms of the technology infrastructures, from my healthcare experience, I was able to get this information. 3 times more hospitals, 4 times more bed, and 100% EMR, which is electronic medical record penetrations. It means we are digitized. In terms of digital DNA, we are well advanced of other markets. For example, for the broadband penetration, we are about everywhere, like 96%. And even we are trying to deploy fiber optics to the home. And with that, on average, in terms of household average connection speed, we are like 200 times faster than US. So we are definitely early adopters. What about government? Government keep pushing toward the new technologies and encourage to adopt the new technology into the market. For example, for healthcare, they spent over $1 billion for the last couple of years through the many pilot projects. And this is kind of the technology that we're talking these days here as mobile health or healthcare IT technologies. So there definitely, government is pushing toward the early market support. What it means to the Silicon Valley startups, basically 2 points that I just mentioned: early adopter market and the government support plus engineering talent. Let me add one more axis, which is there are many global top-tier corporations, like LS is one of the examples as a B2B, but there are definitely other corporations that Samsung and LG are B2C. With this additional global top-tier corporations and two other axes that I just described, both of them are working for, let's say, the Silicon Valley startup companies. They can either directly manage or through the partnership, they will together and utilize this system to build a reference site first. And then, remember, this reference site can potentially spill into big market to Japan and China. As you can see, those areas within 3 hours flight from Korea. So that's how we look at the Korea ecosystem and how to utilize this for your startups in Silicon Valley. For the next 3 examples, I'm going to show how I did utilize this ecosystems. First, around 2005 timeframe, after Intel, I co-founded a company, which is mobile wireless chipset company for the smartphones. At that time, like what you're talking these days is the cloud-based cloud computing. But at that time, wireless communication was the buzzword for startups. It was one of the areas that everybody was going after because the Wi-Fi was widespreading to the PCs and the appliances everywhere. That's why Intel and a few other companies tried to extend, first of all, the success of Wi-Fi toward the longer range of communications. So that longer range of wireless communication is called WiMAX. So that's why I founded this mobile WiMAX company. And at that time, tried to address the need of the integrated low-power chipsets for the cell phones. Now, 3 points that I would like to make about these startups. First, this chipset is very complicated chipset. So we need the skilled engineers to design the chipset. Second point, chipset business model is very heavy capital intensive business model. Spending $100 million before hitting the market is often seen. That's a second factor. And third one, different from like Asia versus US, US was thinking that this market was too early. Even the 3G deployment was not fully done, and talking about 4G and mobile WiMAX and LTE was too early. So I had some dilemma of the having an early market and heavy capital intensive business model and how to survive out of this environment. So my strategy at the time was to employ a growth model through the partnership in Korea and APEC countries. So I have my team members at as small as possible in Silicon Valley, and that design was then manufactured in Taiwan, and then you use the module manufacturers in Korea and Japan, and that module goes into phone system manufacturers like Samsung and the carriers, SKT and KT. So all these partners that I was trying to fully utilize from the Korea side. And one more thing was the partner company in Korea was helping together to build the reference site in initial market. So that's how I was able to control the burn rate and sustain longer than other competitors. It is unfortunate that the mobile WiMAX lost the battle against LTE, but no matter what, we are able to exit to the local market because that has a special military application of it. So even as an exit, this partnership and ecosystem in Korea was very valuable to us. So next example was on the mobile software company. Because I spent too much of time and energy on heavy capital-intensive model, and then I switched my interest to the software side. And software is very similarly with the other chipset. Asia was faster in terms of market than US. So we look at the mobile software side, and we have our belief that this software will grow as the smartphone market is growing globally. So we start out on the mobile software company, but one thing in terms of strategy, we didn't know how long it's going to take and how it's going to unfold in terms of market development. So our focus of this company was agile technology platform. So we don't know what's going to happen. So we try to make a very strong technology foundation first, and then integrate payment and track and manage and other value-added services over time with the market growth. So that was my target. And in terms of growth strategy, as I said, the market was spread out globally. Like for US, back in 2009, 2009, US was just gaining traction in the mobile payment, mobile banking side. But at the same time, Korea and the EMEA markets are already past that point, and they're looking for other value-added applications like mobile transit and mobile ticketings, so many other value-added applications. So looking at the different stages of market, my growth strategy was first utilize Korea as a platform development, and then build a first initial reference. And then after that, I strengthened the platform through the 13 more APAC country engagement. So by the end of the 13 reference site in APAC, we were ready to use that as a silver bullet point for US market penetration. In fact, it did work out well. So after that APAC reference site, we were able to penetrate into big financial institutions in US. So we quickly grow to a large site, and then repeated procedures for the value-added applications over time. Finally, at the end of the day, we sold our company to one of the large software company in US. Okay, third example is a little different from the other two. This is how I was able to come up with a business model from working with the teams and the environment in Korea. In 2007-ish, Stanford came up with a fantastic invention, which is the robot climb on the windows. Let me show that. Okay, this is one of your fellow PhD students at Stanford came up with this invention. And in fact, he's now teaching at MIT. And he and I sat down to discuss and come up with the business model out of this. This is great invention. Then, how we can make money out of this. That's kind of business model. We talked about many different technologies around these robot systems. Among them, the foot was a very interesting point, which this one gives the strong gripping on the one hand. On the other hand, it can easily release it. That's why it can move around. So with that point on, we tried to come up, we came up with a gripping application. So same kind of Gecko foot tape was underneath of these two areas. And when you attach to the glass, and with a little bit of a tangential force, it gives a strong adhesion. So that means this technology can be somehow applicable to the handling of glasses. So that's how much we are able to come up with. But then, what can we do with this? We didn't know anything about beyond that. This is kind of ideas and experimental. This is one of the Stanford lab that we made out of this, and you can see that even the addition is so hard, and you can even do like a rotational movement without dropping the glasses, and you can see this. The other point is that whenever you have a strong gripping forces, then it's hard to drop or release. The point of handling glasses, you have two things together: strong gripping at one hand, the other is you have to release easily. Otherwise, you cannot handle these glasses pretty well. So with this much of information from Stanford, and we spent days and nights and to come up with the viable commercial business model out of this. We made so many trips to Korea. And why to Korea? Because similar with the other 12 cases, robotics was a little bit early in US market. At the same time, Korean government was pushing pretty hard to adopt the new technologies, including robotics. So that's why we made so many trips over there, and the government and the universities, they helped a lot to arrange meetings with corporations. So we met the LG and Samsung many times, and we found that one of their LCD manufacturing process, something called ODF, was in fact used in the actual lines. What it does is you have two glass plates, and in the later stage of process, within the vacuum, they assemble together. So basically, the upper glass need to come in and rotate up and push it down to assemble both upper and lower glasses together. So from many meetings, we found that this is actually happening in the LCD process, and we were able to replace the existing system called ESD, which is electrostatic choke, which is better in a sense that so many problems when the electric outage happens, all these glasses were dropped and broken. And the other disadvantage was this electricity which is induced to use the graphings has potential damage on the circuitry in the glasses. So our technology was found that as a good potential advantage replacement of this market. Sorry. Okay. The point here is, how I was able to utilize the Korean ecosystems to come up with the business models. I'm not going to go into details of the last startups. Just for the next 1 or 2 minutes, let me talk about one of the technology hub in Korea and the startups over there. Pangyo Techno Valley is about 10 miles south of Seoul, Gangnam, which has about 700 local startup companies. They have many offices there, including AntNap, which is the security software company, and the Solid and KakaoTalk that you are pretty much aware of. Today, I'm going to talk about Solid. Why? Because I believe this is one of the exemplary startup companies from Korea. And like startup companies here, the engineering PhDs founded this company, and their focus was on technology. And after 6 years of the hard work, they were able to go to IPO in the Korea market, which is the NASDAQ equivalent, which is what we call Kosdaq. And after that, they're working on the global extensions with the solid technology foundations. With the half of their employees, about 154 to 50, 70, they're engineers, and half of them are holding advanced degrees. Among their 14 years of the financial chart, I just want to point out this 2005 and 6, which is the distinction between domestic and overseas. So after successful IPO, they invest more on to global expansions in terms of R&D. After 5 or 6 years of the more spending versus saturated market from Korea side, we were successfully out of this dilemma and came to the global expansions. From 2012, last year, they came back bigger than before. More importantly, the characteristics of revenue, the overseas market is trying to surpassing the domestic market side. And as a result, they are doing the global business in many different areas. The point that I tried to come up with this startup is same and similar. In my case, I utilize Korea ecosystem from here, from Silicon Valley perspective. In their case, they founded the company in Korea, but utilized the early adopter markets and the fast growing wireless communication markets over there to build their technology barriers. And with that, they were able to come up to the global market. And now with that solid foundations, they're able to play globally. So that's, in a sense, that we share the same fundamental past and how to utilize the Korean ecosystems. I think Brian will talk about more of this kind of opportunities and similar areas.
Yeah, Jim, thank you very much. Why don't you have a seat and
Okay.
let's change over, and I'll change the slides and ask Brian to give a few comments. Do you want to use the PDF version or the PowerPoint version? Okay. I guess I've got the PDF up, so there we go. Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'll have a quick intro about Formation 8, and then how we're working with Korea. It's a very special day for me. It's back home at Stanford, and I'm telling you why you should work in my home country, Korea. I think Jin already did a great job telling you. I'll just add a couple more things. Really quick on Formation 8. We just raised a pretty good size of fund, and we're a pretty new fund in the Valley. We invest in early stage growth companies in mostly IT sectors, but some other sectors as well, because I'll tell you why. We just consider most of the big industries as tech industry now. And we invest in mostly US companies. We do seek for opportunities out of US as well. But then most of the companies we have here, we work with them, help them go get bigger, mostly with the Asia market, including Korea. And I'll focus more on Korea today. And we invest about $5 to $20 million each in the companies and work with them. So I thought I would just introduce the team of Formation 8 to you. It's like Jim, Joe, and myself pretty much started Formation 8. We have a special advisor, a good friend, Gideon. Jim and Gideon, myself are Koreans or Korean Americans, so we naturally have to work with Korea. Joe started Palantir. We have a lot of Stanford network here. Joe is also Stanford alum, Gideon as well. So we built companies, we helped companies before, and we decided to team up together and just do that under one platform. So we're very excited, and Gideon definitely helps a lot in the process. So what we believe at Formation 8 is, I think this slide and next slide will tell you, it's we think there was a very big couple, like waves in the Valley. Started with the old enterprise for sure, and then there was some telecom wave, and then most recently, we think there was really fun time with the consumer wave. We still believe there's going to be a lot happening there, but we do think the peak is probably past. The next wave we are very excited about is what we call smart enterprise. I won't talk about it too much detail, but it's all the data and software that is really transforming all the existing big industries, and we think that's where most disruptive things are going to happen. $1 trillion business opportunities, we think. So we're in that one. And I mentioned it earlier. We just think that there's no more education, healthcare, finance, energy sector as a silo sector. We just think that this world is now changing so fast. Every single big industry is already getting disrupted by engineer-led companies, software, big data, different type of approach. You have to think out of box. That is all getting applied to majority of the industries right now. So we did invest in most of those companies. These are all companies our partners got involved before and now. So we think this is a big theme going on. Now I'll just talk more about now like Asia and then Korea, right? So again, this is how we work at Formation 8. Again, like the core, innovation we think still happens in the Valley. But then when you think about the growth of all these technology companies, it's hard to think things without Asia, right? And so we have office in Singapore, Korea, China to support our companies going there, establishing partnerships, selling more of their products and solutions, and it's working very well. I'll just give you some examples. In US, when we deal with an energy IT company that they need to sell or partner with a utility, in US it's very challenging. It's a great market, but you have to deal with at least a couple hundred utilities who all have different perspective, who have different decision-making process, and it's hard to scale very fast. Compared to that, in China, there's only two pretty much utilities. The bigger one is State Grid. Definitely not easy to establish a partnership, but if you know how to do it, if you really put the effort and you get it, you can see the numbers. You basically get like 2/3 of China as your customer instantly. Korea has only one utility as well, which is even better probably. Again, it's not like easy to establish a partnership with them, but it's totally worth going after it. And there are ways to get it done. This is another one. This is totally outdated, but you probably heard about, WhatsApp, getting acquired, right? But other than WhatsApp, there's WeChat in China, as you probably know, right? Kakao and Line from Korea, and a couple more keep coming up. But let's just take a look at Line, WeChat, and Kakao, and this is again like very outdated, right? So it's probably safe to say getting close to double of this number. But when you see it, just those three mobile platforms together, they had 900 million users altogether. It's definitely much more than a billion. They had like 7 billion daily messages going across the platform. Just only Line had like 1 billion sticker transactions going on. So when you think about this, and then if you are already in a mobile startup company, or if you're planning to work on that type of company, it's probably not a good idea if you're going to ignore these potential partners. They could really change the game. They bring you instant distribution, and they're actively looking for the right partners. They are here in the Valley, so it's a great moment for you to think about this. I think Jin already talked about why Korea is a very exciting place. So I won't go through the detail, but I actually even found out with my team that there's actually like a couple more exciting things about Korea. It's a very dynamic country. It's the best mobile, penetration, best infrastructure for that. So if you have an app or if you have a platform, Korea is a very good test-based market. You can get feedbacks. People are very, very picky about things. And as you know, like if you look at, if you look at the iPhone, if you look at the iPad, 70-80% of the components are pretty much coming from like Korea, right? And the critical ones. So it is a very interesting country itself. What I want to talk more is this. This is our model as well. So as I mentioned, we work with Korea, China, and Singapore, Southeast Asia. Korea is a very good hub for that activity, right? So if you're planning to go into Asia in general, I do strongly recommend thinking about working first with Korea. And that's what we're doing as well. Because Korea, there's two things. One, if you talk to all the leadership at Samsung and LG and like LS and many of these corporations, they are not trying to find the next solution in Silicon Valley for Korea market. They're all trying to go global, right? They know that Korea market is small. They're actively going into China. They're actively going to India, Africa, like most of the part of the world. So if you can strike a very important partnership with them, they will also take you to other part of the world, right? So Korea is a great partner because of that. Second is, you probably heard about K-pop, right? Korean like pop industry and all that becoming quite hot. It is even trying to come to US these days, I guess. But it's not just the pop music only. It used to be Japan as a trendsetter before in Asia. Now I think it's really Korea. So if you talk to the young folks at China, they are really trying to see the fashion, the food, the culture coming out from Korea. That's why the K-pop is also getting a lot of boost. So it's a great partner if you can leverage that in your business. If you are in the media, entertainment, or a certain mobile business, think about partnering with K-pop or K-culture kind of folks, because then you get additional angle when you go into China or Southeast Asia. So again, this is some good numbers. Again, this is also outdated. It's 2011, but look at the growth, and that is not slowing down. It will slow down at some point, I can say, but at least for the next couple of years, I think it's going to just like continue this growth. So think about it seriously. It's a big wave over there. I thought I would just give you some examples as well. We've been a big investor in Oculus. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's a virtual reality company. Just got acquired by Facebook. It was a very exciting company to work with, and I won't get into too much detail because it's still in the process of the acquisition. But I would tell you this: in the success of Oculus, there were many critical components that was coming from Asia. As we already talked about iPhone and iPad, the component part, Oculus had critical partnership in Korea that enabled many of their technologies. That is one. Second was, I was also deeply involved in the partnerships. And for the virtual reality for Oculus, there were many significant partners lining up in Asia. And some of those are game studios, some of them are movie theater chains. But when you see the size of the business they can bring, it's probably like 8 to 10x compared to the biggest like game studios in US. 8 to 10x or even like 20, 30x in terms of the movie theater, like movie kind of contents distribution, education market. For the VR ecosystem, we had no doubt that Asia would play a critical role. And that really supported Oculus in general. Coupang is an interesting thing. I invested in Coupang. It's a Korean company. It's the e-commerce, I would say, I won't go too deep, but it's an e-commerce company. I just wanted to talk about Coupang because for some of you who might say, well, I do want to probably work with Korea, but Korea market, again, I also said it, Korea market is small. But depending on your business, Korea market itself could give you a big success. Because I think Jin mentioned it's a very like dense city, and people use mobile a lot more than we do over here. And they're very used to commerce and mobile commerce. So Coupang is, with just Korea market, is way over $1 billion revenue today, right? And it's just keep growing fast, and we still think there's a lot more they can get with just Korea market, right? So think about that too. I just thought it would be a nice example to share. This is my last slide. This is, well, I think like Jin was talking a little bit about it. Korea, again, the reason why I really enjoy working with Korea is because they're really trying hard. It's still time where they're like evolving and learning. But the Korean government, the people in Korea, they're just really trying hard to bring up the ecosystem. So I was honestly very cautious whenever there was some of these kind of initial plans. But after talking to the folks involved in this K-Valley plan, which is about building the Silicon Valley ecosystem in Korea, myself and my team working with Korea decided to jump in and really play a critical role in this action. Again, that is a one actual valley type place in Korea, very close to Seoul. And all the top high-tech companies, including the Line and Kakao type exciting companies, they're pretty much like moving into this area. There are a couple universities there, which also helps the ecosystem. What we're trying to do here is to bring the global perspective early on. I told them I don't want this to become like a Korea-centric plan. It has to adopt things from Silicon Valley as soon as possible, have the people, right people in the Valley, which is not just all the Koreans here, but folks at Stanford, folks around the Valley, to get involved early on and help out. So we are bringing many friends and great mentors around the Valley to participate and help out. But so if you are thinking about either putting a smaller office in Korea or actually start your company in Korea for Asia market, K-Valley is also going to provide a lot of benefit. But we're trying to tell them what are the practical benefits that they should be giving, right? So this is a starting point, I guess, for Korea, but we'll do our best to build it. We are exploring a lot of partnership with Stanford. So I hope you could participate as well. I think that's all I have.
Great,
Thank
Brian,
you.
thank you. Jen, let's us go back up, and all three of us now become a panel. Jen, why don't you sit in the middle? Brian, take the far seat.
Sure.
I'll sit over here. Um, while we're getting set, let me ask the first question. So, if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up a company from zero, you have zero resources, you've got to do things with little or no money. You're trying to build your connections as you go along. It impresses me that most people would think it's too hard to do things globally early on, that really growing a startup company through this kind of global partnership is like 10 times as hard and 10 times as risky. What do you think are the challenges, and how do people overcome those challenges? Jen, you go first, and then Brian, would you take that?
Sure.
Okay. You're absolutely right on that. The operation, from the operation perspective, it has a lot of complexity, and it's not that easy. First of all, you need to talk to your VCs over here, and whenever you are saying that I'm going to have like global operation together, and they are,
They look at you and say,
yeah, they said you are crazy or not, something like that. But think about this way. One of my example was very capital intensive business model, for example. If you do it in US only, normally $100 million before hitting any market inflection point was quite popular at that time. So with the control of the burning rate, and if you have a strong partnership, like in overseas, in my case, because I was educated over there, I had context, and the government and other ecosystems are fully supportive on that. And with that story behind that, I was able to work with the US VCs, and they bought their ideas.
okay, they bought the ideas, but then you actually got started into the operations and had to manage it. You can only be in one place at a time.
Yes, so there's another very interesting story. When I was working as a CTO for the mobile software company, and the people often ask me where I live, where is my home address. My typical answer was 1A, which is my airplane seat number. So I need to be in the air always. I think that's quite typical. I don't know, it's changing so fast, and these days I don't know what's going to happen. But back then, even until like 2012, everybody was traveling from US to India and Korea, so it wasn't that issue.
Yeah.
For me.
Okay, Brian, what do you think about this? I mean, you're looking at it from the investor side.
Right.
What are the things that you would say are the key points that a company would bring into this sort of global aspect that you would look at as for success?
Well, I think I'll give you an answer first that you're very familiar with, which is you do need the right partner. You do need the right partner that you can really trust. And this is not easy, right? So that's why many people talk about it, but it's not easy to establish. I think, first of all, you have to be very open-minded. And it's also the interesting timing right now. Like it's probably not, you're probably not thinking enough if you are not considering Asia as a place to go at this moment, right? Another thing I would say is like more allies is critical. That's why we started Formation 8. Right. I mean, I would have to say like that. That's why you should come to Formation 8, right? That's why we started it. We thought that it's a timing when companies should go to Asia and really work with Asia. But it is hard. It is hard, as you mentioned. It's and so it's not just like an entrepreneur job. We cannot expect the entrepreneur to like resolve that alone. So what we try to do is, at least, is this entrepreneur someone we can work with, right? Is he willing to, or she willing to trust us and really work with us? Then we have to do our part, right? So, and the good thing is many of these, potential partners in Asia, they're all coming here as well now, right? So it's much better time. I mean, when 10 years ago, when I was doing it with my team in a different way, it was quite tough, because we had to, as Jin said, had to really travel ourselves, do all these conference calls. The good thing is, as you know, like everyone, Tencent, right, Samsung, and many, many more, they are here as well. So it's a better time, but you have to put that effort and find more allies from the VC side, from the corporate side.
Can I ask about how long you were actually invested in Oculus before Facebook bought them out?
Well, we first got involved about a year and a half ago, and then
Okay.
the significant investment was about 5-6 months ago.
Were you doing things for them to help them get into the Asia market?
Yes, yes. I mean, that was our thesis when we actually made our first investment. We saw amazing, well, first of all, it was amazing team and vision. And then our team, not just myself, but we have a team in Asia. We all agreed that we can make significant impact together with this company. So we helped them setting up a Korea office. We hired the people together. We, again, as I mentioned, we started talking to most of the network we had in Asia for entertainment, education, all those, industries. We were starting to line up them. And again, I can't tell more detail, but the component partnerships was critical for this company. And they were doing very well, but definitely like they could take some support. So yeah, I mean, we like when you do something between Asia and US, you have to work with your investor and with your allies almost as like building a company together. It cannot be through just introductions. It cannot be just through some reference. And that's what we did with Oculus.
Okay, great. Let's open the floor. Questions from the floor? If not, I have one more. Let me go first then. So Brian, the arrow goes from Silicon Valley to Asia in your picture. At what point do you see arrows from, say, Southeast Asia going to
Right.
other places in Asia and the U.S.?
Well, I think there is already an arrow. We are actually investing in also a couple of companies in Asia, and then we help them go to other part of Asia, and also to U.S. Right? It's just the fact is the truly disruptive companies like the platform type approach companies are just coming out more here. But if you look at certain type of business models, actually Asia, are actually like doing, quite better, and they have advantage, which is they're closer to also now big market, which is China, Southeast Asia. So it's happening. It is happening. I think that's why we are also trying to support them from the ecosystem part, because engineers and entrepreneurs, they are very good people coming out from that market. It's just about, can they get the support? So it's just taking a bit more time, but it's growing very fast.
Okay. Jen, a follow-up for you.
Yeah.
So large, high prestige companies in Asia are not easy to work with,
Correct.
right? How did you get through and convince them that you were for real?
Okay. Well, before my current job, I was working for GE, and GE, we were saying that has matrix organization, and it is really tough to work and manage within that environment. And compared to that, for myself, because I may be educated and was able to speak Korean, but there's no difference in terms of the difficulties of working with them. The difference is basically they are huge corporations. Decision matrix is all complicated. There's so many the parties involved in there, and you need to get their agreement together. So at a high level, I'm not saying it's not necessarily more difficult over there, but nonetheless, there are some differences there, definitely. One of the example is that the HR perspective, not like working with the corporation ladder per se, but their HR policy is very strict. There is like HR laws that you cannot easily let the people go. So there are other side that is a little different from what you are used to here in Silicon Valley. So I think that's more challenging and difficult rather than working with them in a corporate culture perspective.
Okay, go ahead.
Sort of thinking through what I just heard in both of your presentations and the value proposition of considering Korea as sort of the launching pad into other markets, into Asian markets. And I'm wondering for how long that value proposition is going to remain, if there is really a compelling one today, as it appears to me as Korea is acting as like the middleman. And what would be the motivation to work with that middleman? Is it the infusion of is it capital that one cannot access here in the U.S.? Is it human and facility resources that would be too expensive to recreate here. What is, succinctly, what is the value proposition for choosing South Korea as a middleman?
You can go first. I can take it first before I forget. Okay. As I pointed out in my presentation, I was rushing through it. Sorry about that. I was trying to make that point clear. First, Korea is very early market, and they have tendency of trying a new technology. So, on the other end, for like Silicon Valley startups, we are betting on the new technology in early stage, of the market. And ironically, many VCs are here and capitalists are saying that we need to wait for the right timing sometimes, especially when you are dealing with heavy capital-intensive business model per se. So you need to somehow survive that gaps, okay? So in that perspective, Korea and their ecosystem is really one of the strong advantage for you to come up with your test cases as a reference point. And also you can sustain with the control burn rate for a few years until the actual global size market is taking off. Sometimes, it doesn't take off, but you have longer, let's say, runway to wait for the big wave. So in that perspective, Korea has one of the excellent ecosystems. Okay.
Yeah, when we have a portfolio company, right, to your point, saying, okay, now I want to go into Asia, right, especially China at the end, like, how do I do that? There are many reasons why we first get to talk about, like, okay, should we do something in Korea first? I would say the most important thing for now is, I think, like, after Israel and the Valley here, Korea has really good talented engineers. So if you need to do some localization work in a decent way, and you want good designing aspect of it, hardworking, trustworthy, I think Korea has a very unique value proposition for now, right? More and more engineers are, getting into the startup environment, so you get good pool of people like that. Second is, again, like when we have, if you want to test something in China or Southeast Asia, it's compared to US, it might be probably more straightforward, but it's still a pretty broad kind of market sector. Market that you have to like work on. Korea, the strength is, again, as I said, people are very dynamic, and the word of mouth is just like pretty fantastic, right? So if you have a service and you have some of the people in like young folks, especially in Korea, to try it out, they do give you pretty decent feedback. And good ones, right? It's really meaningful ones. So before you go to China and really drop it and drop it in like, Singapore and other places, it's a good test bed for that reason. The last thing I probably already mentioned is Samsung, LG, like Hyundai Motors, all these companies happen to be, happen to have their headquarters in Korea, right? Those folks, if you sit down with them, again, as I mentioned, they're all about going global. So if you talk to a Chinese company, that's probably the right partner for you for just China, because they have top priority first acing their business in China. But if you talk to folks in Korea, they care about Korea market, but they have already pretty good position, so they can help you like this. But then they'll say, okay, how can we work with you to launch like 2 months from now in China, and then 3 months later in Indonesia? When you are aligned, like with them, it works much better. So that's why, and I don't know how long this will go. Honestly, like, I hope they don't lose that kind of momentum. If they do, I think they will get into a serious problem. Even looking at some of the period of time that Japan had to go through. So at least they're trying right now. So I do think at least for a couple more years.
If you don't mind me jumping in
Sure,
with
please.
my own kind of take on this, notice that in this it's implied that the entrepreneur has global perspective.
Correct.
And that you're dealing with somebody whose view of Asia is not just one country, but of a global strategy where you're going to go in multiple markets eventually. I think that's really important, and it's one of the things that I really hope comes through from this course. Asia markets are important individually, but what's really important is being able to develop the skills to be flexible from one to another.
Correct.
You had a question.
Ask about the engineering talents and the entrepreneurs in Korea, because I heard that join a startup or someone doing a startup is not something that's very attractive to youngsters because it's more popular to join like the tribals and like big corporations. So how easy it is for startups to attract talents to join them or to meet other entrepreneurs in Korea?
Yeah, well, I won't say it's like completely different now, right? It's still, I would say probably 70-80% of parents would be very mad if the kid says, I got into Samsung, but I'm not gonna take that. I'm gonna join the startup. I think they'll get in serious trouble. We backed many like entrepreneurs like that. It is changing though, right? It is changing because I think this is a big challenge to groups like Samsung and LG and others because it's not any more attractive place. Right? Young people now in Korea I mean, they still have that pressure, but they are really like finding a place where they can be happy. And they want to innovate things actually. If you even talk to many young people, even at these like, chaebol conglomerates, they're very innovative thinkers. But then when they understand that, oh, but this environment I am, like, is not going to support my ideas, many of them are actually leaving at this time. I would say there's still a small number of engineers and young people in Korea that would say, I'm going to start a startup, right? That's still like a big problem, but getting better. The exciting part is if there's a very established, fun startup coming from the Valley, for example, and then they say, we want to have a local team. And so then there are many good engineers that would like to jump into that. So what I'm trying to do a lot is helping that part, because I think that will really help Korea ecosystem more fundamentally. Because we tell many engineers in Korea, like, hey, you don't have to start a company. It's like the government push is not about just you doing a startup now. It's actually bad if you're not ready to do it. But get into like an awesome, company when they're opening up an office in Korea. Learn how they build a company. When you're ready, then like go out and start your own. So we are doing a lot of that. We have many, as I said, we invest mostly in US companies. We help them set up companies in Asia and Korea, including Korea. That's when we go after the best engineers and we try to tell them, look, like, this will be a great opportunity for you because if you can learn and then you say like, hey, I'm now ready to do my own stuff, we're happy to back you, right? So it's still not like here, but I think it's not just, the good thing is, it's not about the students changing their mind anymore only. I think it'll naturally happen because the conglomerates in Korea are not doing a good job keeping their place as a sexy place, right? So it's going in the right direction.
You're also looking at companies here, so people have already made an international jump, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
That's one thing that's a big difference. I saw some, wow, all over the place. You go first.
I have two questions. So the book on ecosystems is Rainforest, and I think most of us have read it. Victor's a good friend of mine. How much do you think the ecosystem is artificial or real because of the $97 billion pledged by the Korean government? And then the second question I have, I'm not as smart as all of you. I spent my career on Wall Street. And so my question is there really a liquidity event for a lot of these companies? I mean, the Korean stock exchange is small.
questions.
Very, very small,
Yeah.
right?
Can you elaborate on
So
the
the first
second
about the
question?
ecosystem, right?
That I know, but
Yeah, to what extent is government intervention something that will really create something sustainable, I think is probably a better way of looking at it. Artificial or not, money is real, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay. I think it's a really great question. Now, let me give you another example. Like U.S. government, Obama healthcare, they tried to put in a lot of monies for the connected healthcares, and all the smart grid, smart meters. They put a lot of initial monies in there, and now, by now, if the market is not taking off, then would you say the same thing is artificial or not? My point here is that whenever you work on the new technology and new markets, there's always a failures and continuous success and mindset is there. That's much more important. So from my own experience, by the way, I have most of my startups in Silicon Valley, and you try to utilize the career side to make a growth in different ways here and there. Sometimes, like mobile WiMAX, they call it as a Vibro. Government tried to push it pretty hard, to make a global standard. And in fact, it came as a global standard called 802.16e. So for that, they put a lot of money in there. Eventually, market didn't take off. You know that they lost battle against LTE. So, you know, nonetheless, you know, government has their intention, try to keep working on it, to keep pushing, and
Can I ask kind of a very basic level question about
Yes.
this? So what kind of money is this? What sort of government money is there if a company is trying to locate in Pangyo Techno Valley or
Oh, okay.
in K Valley? Also, what kind of strings does it come with?
okay,
That's my question.
Yes.
transfer. Okay. Uh, you have your own.
Yeah,
case?
so I can go first. I mean, you would probably already know what type of money that is. There's so many, right? I mean, they have a lot, many policies. There are many, I mean, if you come, we'll give you this. If you come, we can match. If you get a funding, we'll match you. We can match you with 5 times. Now it's, I think, 9 times in Korea or something like that. It comes with many strings. I think that's also changing, though. I think that they're learning that the way they been doing is really not working. Unfortunately, I still think it's not really completely different yet, right? So what we say is, even to the entrepreneurs, is like, well, first of all, you should not rely on that, right? Like but it's good to have thing, right? And when we have a chance to talk to the government, it's the same thing. We say, I think the government should be like more like like more like a like a referee rather than like the actual coach. Just give us the right environment to play, right? And the ones who do well will survive. The ones who don't do well or do some bad things, just make sure you get that. But don't try to say like, this is the way to go, and we'll give you more. I know it's really hard for the government when they're like very eager to do it, but I think to me that is what we tell them. So I would say, and it's unfortunate to say this, but I think like bulk of it is still probably artificial. But because we know their intention, right? And that's why I think we cannot just look at the government. We should say, okay, when the government is acting like that, it's a great timing. How can we contribute as well, and hopefully help them? It's not easy, but that's why I'm asking a lot of folks from Korea and Asia in the Valley to kind of like do that as a give back thing, try to support. Really quick on your second one, yes, Korea market itself is probably still not a sexy exit market. I think they are really thinking about it, but Asia in general is a very attractive place. That's why we do work a lot with Korea, not for the exit, like hopefully the exit, but a great place to grow.
Yeah.
But then, like as you know, like these folks in China, even Southeast Asia, they're buying companies at pretty interesting valuation. Korea not yet, right? But I would say like that should not like discourage you like thinking about Asia in general, right? So.
Jen, let me ask you
Yes.
follow-up. So in terms of what you would see as an appropriate exit strategy for companies that LS gets involved with, are these things that LS Group would want to acquire, or are they really things that you would be happy to see them go public, or what?
Because we are a corporate, and we are looking for our like a strategic growth together. So as I pointed out in one of my slides, joint venture is one example, and the acquisition from the startup perspective, that means there are exit opportunities for us. So we are open for that. Going into IPO by independent, a little bit, we have some distance from our corporate perspective, but
Okay.
I think,
That's what we're looking at.
sorry, really quick on that. I just want to say, if you are thinking about or already working on a company, I think what we like to do is always again, going into Asia, you need many allies, right? So usually what we recommend is work with many of these strategic partners, but don't necessarily have them as the major, like like partner that would really drive your strategy or direction. So we do involve many of these strategic partners like LS or Singtel or Tencent to even be an investor if they want, and then establish a partnership. But then that's when we make sure we bring the right financial investors together and friends to help them drive the company the right way. That usually works very well.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
You are counting on your Korean Valley, and Silicon Valley's advantage is attract the top talent from all over the world.
Right.
I was wondering, what percentage in Korean Valley are they foreign companies or foreign people? Or are they all Korean?
Right. No. So that's why I completely agree with you. And that's why. Well, K Valley is just like getting started. And when the people in Korea started that, they definitely had to first reach out to their best high tech companies around, right, like Korea. So right now, the image I had, those are all Korean companies, right? So when we like, I mean, Formation 8 started talking to them, we said, well, you know, if we could get involved, we would like to make sure our strategy gets implemented, right? And our strategy was this should not continue in this way, right? Because then it'll become a very nice town for Korea, but it won't really become a meaningful place. So we said, you know, in next year, right, when we show this like picture, it should have probably at least half of the companies as Chinese, U.S., you know, hopefully many like branches from Silicon Valley, top, you know, IT companies. And I told them you should really give incentives to those companies, and we're happy to link those to you. So yes, I mean, I'm with you. It's that is the mission, right? If that doesn't happen, then it'll be another failure.
Good.
Okay.
Let's go ahead. I saw your hand first. Yeah.
You said it's a very good market for early adopters. I mean, how big is the economy? Are people rich enough to buy expensive products just like that, or?
I have a statistical number of that. Globally, I learned it from GE operation is about 1% roughly. The Korean market is global compared to global size is between 1 to 5%.
But that is like the number 13 country in the whole world.
Yes.
Okay, so
How is the presence of the American companies over there, like Apple or any of the Western companies, for example? You were talking of Samsung, LG, and Hyundai, or how about Ford, or you know, any of the Western companies? How is their presence? Are they comfortable enough to do business, or like can they like be big giants over there too, like with the locals, compete with the locals, like?
Okay. Since again, you know, I have done my work from GE perspective. There are many branches and sales offices over there in Korea. Again, the sales numbers for the global cooperation perspective is around 1 to 5%, and that number itself is huge. For example, GE, the Korean market itself was about $2 billion. So you know, still a comfortable size and it's growing. It's not like they grow over against like other Korean competitors. Not often seen over there, but the market size is good for that.
Yeah, education. If you're doing education company like with Korea market, I think you can go IPO, right? They will be a good enough customer for you to go like IPO. It's like expenditure per like capita. Korea is like way up there, right, on education part. If you look at some like mobile game companies, right, that launched early on like Kakao platform and all, you see them making like 1 million a day, right? That's like, you know, like that can tell you, you know, how active they are. I mean, the company we invested in as well.
I want to, maybe you have more recent info than I do, but a couple of years ago I was putting together a presentation, and I remember that Korea had like the number 13 size economy in the world, but in terms of R&D spending, Korea was like number 3 or number 4.
Yeah.
Right.
It was remarkably a lot of money being spent on technology development,
And,
which is also in the growth phase,
right,
you know, useful.
and
kind of
many,
thing.
I mean, Qualcomm, Microsoft, I mean, Google, many of those, right, like folks who are more familiar here, they do choose Korea many times as their kind of like key R&D like location, because again, same thing, they get really big, you know, good feedbacks. It's a pretty strategic location as well for many other locations. So it's definitely, you know, a place, to your point, you know, that is working that way.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Question on social entrepreneurship. If there's a service that targets and benefits Korean population, but if it doesn't have a business model, what are the resources for funding?
We were going to look at this in a subsequent week of the series, honestly. Social entrepreneurship is a very interesting topic.
Yes.
Where you have to consider elements of entrepreneurship, meaning startup company formation, in order to come up with a sustainable business model. Yeah. But the big difference between social entrepreneurship and for-profit startup companies is that, by definition, you don't have the same kind of exit. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to build something and grow it and make it go IPO or sell it to somebody isn't really something you have in the social entrepreneurship space. So typically you do have to find different resources who are doing impact investing or whatever for that. Now, I'm not sure what kind of
Yeah.
impact investing there might be in Korea. Or
Well, I'm not the expert for sure, but I can tell you it's still, compared to here, it's very early stage. So if you're looking for resource, it might be more challenging. But in terms of impact, it could be a good market because it's early stage.
Well, how about startups in general, like funding in Korea?
All right. Well, it's they're a good amount of capital, not easy to access. I think that's a problem they're facing, and they know that, right? So that's why I was saying they're changing that. They have they have like good programs. They have many VCs. But I think we're also talking about this in the Valley these days, right? Like we now pitch to the entrepreneurs, to the good ones, right? Because we have to tell them why you should take our money. Because they know the good ones. I mean, like you guys here, like money is commodity, right? You know that. So you want the value-adding partner to help you build your billion-dollar company. I think I'm just saying like they're very good people and very good VCs in Korea. But for like a company to really go to global and think about bigger ideas and different ways to do things, I think that's the challenge of that ecosystem. So many entrepreneurs don't necessarily pick that money. So that's the.
Go ahead.
So, similar question. Many of the examples that you both used in your presentations had a lot to do with how Korea is a really great supporting ecosystem for a growth strategy. And my question is, well, what about the stage before that? What about the companies that are, like Professor Dasher said, starting from ground zero?
Can I kind of preface this? I set them up. I told them I wanted them to talk about growth. And, basically this is kind of the focus that we're using this quarter is more on growth and exit than it is on the actual formation. Having said that, and said that I set you up, go ahead.
And I guess that ties in with a lot of the other things that were brought up, such as the government subsidies, as well as this whole K-Valley formation in support of a more collaborative startup ecosystem. Granted, is it more collaborative for the growth strategy, or is it changing in a sense that Koreans are more encouraged to begin innovating?
So, I mean, really quick from my side is all the K-Valley and some other efforts we're putting is to support them in the earlier stage, hopefully to generate more great entrepreneurs from Korea or other countries' entrepreneurs starting things in Korea. I think that will really help Korea ecosystem in anyway. So that is all activities to hopefully like support more entrepreneurs in that stage, right? But I would say like even if you are earlier stage, but it depends on the business model. If you are in like a mobile business, very specific mobile business, and you're like Series A type, very early stage, it might be better to actually still go now to Korea and to China for even that early growth part, right? So it all depends on the model. But yeah, I mean, it's right now the ecosystem for the early startup side is, I would say like this, it's very, very good if you don't have to rely 100% on the local people there. So if you have a couple really good global like supporters as investor or advisors, and then you go there and set up a company, there's a good ecosystem you can leverage, right? Because the government is positive about helping you. Many people are trying to help. They just need some guidance, right? So if you're looking for guidance in Korea early on, probably still not the best place to go, but
Yeah, I'm echoing what he's saying. So I personally don't have let's say, very start from scratch in Korea. So I would rather started my company here and then try to utilize their ecosystem over there. So somehow you get funding from VCs over here, for example, and then you bring that to the Korea to open up the local branches over there. Then you can find a good syndicate the capital monies over there very easily. So from that perspective on, I think there are good size of capitals and engineers, all the system that you can start with.
I got a comment.
Okay.
I'm an advisor to an accelerator in Seoul. And I think that you see young people in Korea who are really entrepreneurial and excited, and the system is not friendly to them in terms of allowing them to grow. That's why this accelerator is looking at a follow-on program to bring some of the successful companies here to the Valley. And one of the reasons that I wanted this discussion is because I think this kind of international approach to entrepreneurship may actually kickstart a lot, not the company, may actually, get things off the ground to help entrepreneurs see that there are opportunities that didn't used to exist. So anyway, I wanted to say that. You have a question.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the energy sector in Korea, because I know that with it being such a well-educated country as a whole and having a large coastal population, climate change would have to be kind of at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. But at the same time, it can be a kind of risky business to get into, so I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Jim, that's for you.
Okay, so any specific energy sector that you are thinking? For
My
example,
personal favorite is solar, but
solar? Okay.
anything you want to talk about is great.
Okay. Energy, I'm looking at more of like energy ITs, like the smart grids. So utilizing the IT technologies with the traditional like energy in terms of optimize the transmissions and distributions, and reading off the data and pumping it back to your customers, and thinking of the big data and try to utilize those data for the enhancement of the overall distributions. That idea is there definitely, and the government is pushing very hard for that. But similarly to here, the company cultures over there in that sector is slow. Even though Korea in general is faster than other countries, but between the different verticals, they're slower than like electronics and other consumer side of it. So it is taking some time, but it is growing. That's one aspect. The other, all of things that we're talking in the energy side that I just described is mostly software side. The software business in Korea is very, very strange and interesting. And traditionally, it's very much a hardware-centric country, and the software was given for free. That's what their mindset is. So if you try to somehow get like a revenue out of a pure software approach, there is a little bit of challenge to get over it.
I can just add. I mean, you remember Jinny's position is to do open innovation out here for LS Corporation. That gives a good message, I think, because the quick answer is I think there's a great opportunity. Because really quick, two reasons. One is, as Jin said, they're still hardware centric, but they're now recognizing the value of software. But then they also kind of know that it's very hard for them to do it, right? So I'm personally actively always looking for like software engineers in the Valley, putting the next solution that could really disrupt the energy sector. But then they still need to work with hardware vendors and hardware system. Most of the players in Korea, for example, in Asia, that's their expertise, right? So you have a very good partnership. It is not easy, but if you have the right people helping you, it is doable. At the same time, when these companies sell their hardware product in energy, their country, they're good because they can do government projects and other things. But when they think about going to like another country, right, especially developing countries, that country would also need to buy their own country's kind of hardware for energy, right? So to export, you can't go and say like, well, my hardware piece is better than your country one. You have to tell them like a unique value-adding point, which is usually like a total solution, right? You have to almost say like, if you work with us, you get smart grid altogether. Then like other countries start to like look at you. So if you have the right partnership in the hardware side in Korea, and then you are the software company, you have a great chance to go with them as part of that total solution. That's what we're trying to work on. That's a great opportunity, right? So it'll take care of a lot of your marketing and sales and distribution.
I'm afraid we're out of time. Before we go, I want to say thanks to the Alan Miner Foundation for support of our series, and also to the Idea Space Foundation from Manila for support of this series. I'm happy that Earl can be back with us again this week. So please enjoy the networking that we have now. We can talk about this informally. That's the value of actually being here. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to our speakers.
For the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about myself and my role briefly, and then a few startups that I've gone through. Professor Tesh already talked about myself, so I don't want to repeat. But basically, I was born and educated in Korea. Got a bachelor's degree from Seoul National University, and then came to State for my master's and PhD. After graduation, I spent a lot of work in Silicon Valley. First, I worked for Intel about 12 years. After that, a few startups, and the general manager at GE. And currently, I'm working for the LS Corporation as a Silicon Valley operation over here. Basically, I have both technology and business experiences, big corporation and small startups, hardware and software. So whatever you name it, I have all the good taste on that. All right. Oh, okay. So 2 more advertisement slides. I want to talk about my corporation that I'm working for right now. LS is the top 13th largest corporation in Korea in terms of asset. We are technology manufacturing corporation providing a broad range of the equipment for power infra technologies. Our target markets are smart and green, especially in APAC and EMEA markets. And at a high level, we have 5 business units, start from cable and cable systems, and then we call industrial to get this information. 3 times more hospitals, 4 times more bed, and 100% EMR, which is electronic medical record penetrations. It means we are digitized. In terms of digital DNA, we are well advanced of other markets. For example, for the broadband penetration, we are about everywhere, like 96%. And even we are trying to deploy fiber optics to the home. And with that, on average, in terms of household average connection speed, we are like 200 times faster than US. So we are definitely early adopters. What about government? Government keep pushing toward the new technologies and encourage to adopt the new technology into the market. For example, for healthcare, they spend over $1 billion for the last couple of years through the many pilot projects. And this is kind of the technology that we're talking these days here as mobile health or healthcare IT technologies. So there definitely, government is pushing toward the early market support. What it means to the Silicon Valley startups, basically 2 points that I just mentioned, early adopter market and the government support plus engineering talent. Let me add one more axis, which is there are many global top-tier corporations, like LS is one of the examples as a B2B, but there are definitely other corporations that Samsung and LG are B2C. With this additional global top-tier corporations and 2 other axes that I just described, both of them are working for, let's say, startup systems division, which is making smart grid, power, and automations. And we have 3 more additional business units, the materials and consumer life energy side, and machinery and equipment. Combining all of them, last year, our revenue was $34 billion, which is about 5 times bigger for growth for the last 10 years. My operation is called LSSVO. This is corporate strategy team or corporate venture. We are looking for new technologies to be a leader of next generation power infra technologies. We're looking for both in hardware and softwares. For example, smart grid, softwares, and advanced materials are some of the example areas that we are looking for. our corporation LS is known to have a strong partnership management philosophy. It means both internal teamwork and external collaboration. With that, we try to work with potential partners here through the joint ventures M&As. That's the mission that I have here in LS Silicon Valley office. With that, let me talk on today's main topic, which is the Korea and its ecosystem for the Silicon Valley startups. To start with that, let's talk about Korea business environment first. From my last work at GE, I was able to get these statistics. Like Korea is about 1/4 of California in terms of land side, but 30% more population. So it's a very densely populated country. And in terms of the technology infrastructures, from my healthcare experience, I was able to, Silicon Valley startup companies, they can either directly manage or through the partnership, they will together and utilize this system to build a reference site first. And then, remember this reference site can potentially spill into big market to Japan and China. As you can see, those areas within 3 hours flight from Korea. So that's how we look at the Korea ecosystem and how to utilize this for your startups in Silicon Valley. For the next 3 examples, I'm going to show how I did utilize these ecosystems. First, around 2005 timeframe, after Intel, I co-founded a company, which is mobile wireless chipset company for the smartphones. At that time, like what you're talking these days is the cloud-based cloud computing. But at that time, wireless communication was the buzzword for startups. It was one of the areas that everybody was going after because the Wi-Fi was widespreading to the PCs and the appliances everywhere. That's why Intel and a few other companies tried to extend, first of all, the success of Wi-Fi toward the longer range of communications. So that longer range of wireless communication is called WiMAX. So that's why I founded this mobile WiMAX company. And at that time, tried to address the need of the integrated low-power chipsets for the cell phones. Now, 3 points that I would like to make about these startups. First, this chipset is very complicated chipset. So we need the skilled engineers to design the chipset. Second point, chipset business model is very heavy capital intensive business model. Spending $100 million before hitting the market is often seen. That's a second factor. And third one, different from like Asia versus US, US was thinking that this market was too early. Even the 3G deployment was not fully done, and talking about 4G and mobile WiMAX and LTE was too early. So I had some dilemma of the having an early market and heavy capital intensive business model and how to survive out of this environment. So my strategy at the time was to employ a growth model through the partnership in Korea and APEC countries. So I have my team members at the as small as possible in Silicon Valley, and that design was then manufactured in Taiwan, and then you use the module manufacturers in Korea and Japan, and that module goes into phone system manufacturers like Samsung and the carriers, SKT and KT. So all these partners that I was trying to fully utilize from the Korea side. And one more thing was the partner company in Korea was helping together to build the reference site in initial market. So that's how I was able to control the burn rate and sustain longer than other competitors. It is unfortunate that the mobile WiMAX lost the battle against LTE, but no matter what, we are able to exit to the local market because that has a special military application of it. So even as an exit, this